Better Sex at 60. We're both 60s.
I love that one.
Welcome to Yogi and the Beach Man. Today we are with Dominique D'Vita, a registered nurse, a certified Tantra coach, and a sexpert. I'm Jim the Yogi,
And I'm Rick Beach, the Beach Man.
and we are delighted to have you. You talked about separating orgasms from ejaculation, not to feel drained after feeling recharged and energized. That's the things that caught my attention.
I think those are the most magical things I help men with. It's incredible, life-changing.
I can't remember where I saw it, either on your website or on your Facebook page, but you said something about meditation and integrating that into sex.
Meditation helps your sex a lot. The longer you can last in a meditative state, the longer you're going to be able to last in bed for men. And for women, the longer they can last in a meditative state, the more easily it will be for them to orgasm. Because your brain is your largest sex organ. We'll go deeper into it, but I'll just share real quick. I did an interview yesterday because I'm going to do this conference on liberating female sexuality, and they're having top sex educators to be on it. And the lady that did my interview, we did it for 30 minutes, and she says, I've interviewed over 200 people in the last few years, and no one has talked to me about sex the way you have your answers. I could have just had like a 3-hour conversation with you. I've never had anyone share things about sex the way you do. I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
This is my area of expertise for sure. I love talking about these topics. This really lights me up. It's my passion.
Excellent. We had somebody on maybe a month ago, and we talked a little bit about sex, and I think we were both kind of felt reserved. I noticed that when I watched the podcast and listened to it.
Definitely for me, I was.
Yeah.
Because, well, we're cousins, first of all. We've grown up together. But I would say since we've been adults, and certainly since we've reconnected in the last 6 months and Jim moved down the street from me, basically, we don't ever have these conversations between us. When we were kids in the Navy together in Orlando and going to Daytona every weekend, that was different. Then
Very different.
we were just on the prowl at that point.
Different life stages.
Yeah.
I want to dive into this a little bit. Is there anything else that you feel had you reserved or kind of held back in it?
Just talking about sex and having it out there on audio, on video, knowing that my kids could potentially listen to it.
Oh, yes.
Making sure not to infringe on my wife's privacy or anything like that.
That's
I was-
respectful. I
and
appreciate
literally-
that.
I was thinking about coming here today a few hours ago and was researching you a little bit more. And the same exact concerns
Mhm.
entered my head. And I thought about the first time that we had like a sex talk, and I wasn't really prepared because that's not our line.
What do you mean?
I mean, we hadn't had anyone on talking about sex before.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it does fit our genre,
Yeah.
but I just wasn't expecting. All of a sudden,
Yes.
Jim springs a sex coach on me, or I can't even remember what it was.
I
But
love this so much. And I
so I was a little reserved.
Yeah. It's so wild because people can be so uncomfortable with these topics, like not talking about sex or not talking about money. Like those things seem like such a taboo topic, but these are the things that are most important in our lives.
I don't see Rick reserved very often. You're pretty much off the cuff.
Yeah, and prepping for this, I'm much more prepared and I think much more comfortable. So,
You're ready. You're not caught by surprise.
well, I don't know.
As
We
well.
haven't really started yet, so it depends.
We're gonna get
surprise me.
Let me see how I can shock you. I'm glad that we're opening with this. And the reason this is so important is I coach both men and women. I've focused a lot lately on working with men because a male lover that had mastered Tantra was how I had what's called like a Kundalini awakening, or I had a soul awakening, and it really changed my life, my whole life path. And I know that most women will never have this experience. And so I'm trying to guide men to understand there's so much more that they're capable of as lovers and as humans. They're so more powerful than they ever imagined. And they've been dumbed down by adult videos and not getting the right education on these topics because we are so uncomfortable talking about it. The challenge for me here is that even when I do life-changing things for my clients, I share them things and they start changing their lives through the tools that I share with them. They won't share with their friends or anyone else that they've had this. And so then my business hasn't grown as fast as it could and should because men are so secretive about it.
You're not getting those referrals.
They're like not going to tell anyone,
They
what
wanna be
has
the king of the
happened.
hill. They want to be the best lover. They don't want their buddies to be the best lovers.
Not admitting that you don't know something. Think about locker room talk.
Yeah.
Whenever you're in high school as males, and in high school, none of us are good in bed, but the way we would speak about it or way young men would speak about it, they would talk and brag as if they have it already all figured out. So men have been taught to shut down their emotions, the stressors of always being the protector, the provider, the strong one, having it all figured out, not showing any weakness, not being comfortable with expressing emotions, and like that fear that they have. And so you're always that bravado of always being like, oh, I have it all figured out and everything is really great here. So then to go and say, oh, you know what? I needed some help with this
Mm.
is really uncomfortable. And men being uncomfortable amongst themselves talking about this is like the challenge that I have. So I'm so glad that you both are facilitating this conversation today. So more men can start to feel comfortable having these conversations. But with women, we will share if we're having challenges orgasming. And if we learned something or someone guided us, we'll be like, oh, you need to check this out. We will talk about it amongst ourselves, whereas men won't.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think for guys, it's almost like a sign of weakness or something's wrong with you if you're having these talks. But I want to back up
Exactly.
to what you said. You
Yes.
had a Kundalini experience through sex.
Yeah.
Give me the third grade Kundalini awakening.
Yeah, that's a pretty tricky one. So if you look here and you can see, and there's the chakras, and anyone that's listening to this on a podcast, you could Google chakras in your body. So we have these energy centers in our body. We have more than just the 7 shown here. We have some a little above our bodies and out all around our bodies, but these are the main ones in the channel. And at the root of the chakra and in Tantra, which is a lot of it is based from India, there's different lineages, but in India, there is a thing called the Kundalini energy. And this energy is depicted as 2 snakes at the bottom of the spine and at the bottom of the base of the root chakra. And that they usually that energy is like asleep and dormant in all of us. And we're not awakening to our fullest, highest expressions of ourselves. If you also think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the top tier of growth is self-actualization. So most of us are operating and these energies haven't been truly awakened and that fire hasn't been lit up inside of us. What's interesting is when the Kundalini, it's the representation artistically is like the 2 serpents wrapping around your spinal column and coming up to the top, opening up your third eye chakra and your crown chakras at the very top. It's also the same symbolism in the medical field of the caduceus, the staff with the serpents coming up to the top of it. So what happens is most of us in the bottom 3 chakras, we operate at the lower 3 and we have 7. The heart chakra connects the upper chakras to the lower, and the heart chakra connects us to the world around us. But because so many of us have a mother-father wound, as I became a trauma-informed master coach, I learned that over 95% of adults received inadequate parenting. So we armor up and we protect our hearts, but because of childhood hurt or from a past lover that we've had a heartbreak over, and we want to be guarded and we don't want to be vulnerable. And that's how I was before Tantra. So what happens, think of a water hose. There's a kink in the water hose. So everything isn't flowing as powerfully as it could. Most of our society operates in the lower 3 chakras. The root chakras like survival, family needs. And it's almost like a hamster wheel. We're operating like this and we'll bring the energy up. And then for me, I would feel so much turn on because this energy would build up. And then what we want to do is we want to have a release. And then we'll just hook up with someone, for DTF. I'm so turned on and aroused because the energy is like blocked and it's almost like a dam. Like that energy is just like so overwhelming that we'll think, oh, okay, I need to watch an adult movie. I need to have a release. And that really controls us. This is when our sexual energy is controlling us instead of us mastering our sexual energy. And so then we'll have the relief. The energy will like drop back down and we never fully self-actualize or really get fully lit up, right? But then when I had this experience with a lover, what happened was I was able to have prolonged states of ecstatic bliss for 5 hours. And I didn't even know that he was experienced in Tantra. And what happened within that is that that energy down here kept going up and up and up, and it broke through. It's almost like that when you work with your chakras, your sexual life force energy, it actually acts almost like a liquid Drano. It's going to get the clogs out. And it just kept going up through my body till it opened my third eye and my crown chakra. And I was never the same in the best way because it changed how I moved in the world, my energy. I started having more self-awareness And I stopped doing the patterns and the behaviors that weren't serving me. I used to operate from my ego and from fear and lower based energies. And then I got more into my, even aligned with my path and my purpose. And it completely changed my life. So that is a Kundalini awakening. And you can do that with Kundalini yoga and other practices as well, with breath work and meditation practices, and have that experience. But you don't want to do that without a guide guiding you, because a lot of people will try to force it and it's almost like you short circuit yourself. I want you to think, if you don't have the right wiring in your body or your home and you put a bunch of volts of energy through there and you're not ready for it, you'll short circuit yourself, and it can really have some negative consequences. So you first need to build the energetic body and the nervous system that can hold this fully charged, where you're fully lit up. And then that
Can-
sent me down a rabbit hole. So that was my experience, but it wasn't
Awesome.
sex that opened it up.
Can you describe in detail what you were feeling when this was happening? Like you mentioned some blockage and shooting through the.
Yeah, I felt like it felt like a soulgasm is what it felt like. This
Okay.
level of orgasmicness rocked me to the very core, the soul of my being.
Yeah.
I had never heard of the word soulgasm, but that's what it felt to me. And then years later, when I was, or maybe about a year later, when I started reading books by Osho, who brought Tantra through the West from India, he actually was talking about soulgasms in there. And I was like, oh, wow, that's exactly how I felt. But it was a deeper, more visceral, more profound experiences of pleasure that I had never experienced before. And you just feel so connected. It's almost as if you're in such bliss. You feel high, like as if you're on drugs. Had no
Mhm.
substances in my body. And it was timeless. Like you think, oh, 5 hours? Like who would want to do that? A lot of women are thinking of what you see in adult videos with the guys just doing the jackhammer move and not being connected and going through the motions. And they're like, oh, I would not want to do that for 5 hours. It's nothing like that. It was almost like a of one another, him being as the god and me being the goddess. And it was an honoring and a presence and like a prayer, a devotion with the pleasure. And oh my gosh, I'm getting just chills thinking about it. And it's literally like the sexual healing Marvin Gaye would sing about. That's what it feels
Yeah.
like. You feel so expanded. You feel so empowered. You feel so much like love energy flowing all through your body. It's
Mhm.
incredible. And then at the time, I was already a recurring guest on Playboy Radio giving sex tips. And I operated very much like Samantha on Sex in the City. I was very guarded. I was very much in my unhealthy masculine energy. And we have unhealthy masculine energy and unhealthy feminine energy, but I was very much in both of those of my unhealthy energies.
Which one was Samantha? Was that Kim Cattrall's character?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So I was very, very sexual. I'm a Scorpio, and I would give my friends sex tips. When I would assist with surgeries, I have a role where I can take the role of an assisting surgeon if a surgery requires two surgeons. And when I would work in surgeries and the patients would be asleep, a lot of times I would be giving sex tips to the staff or sharing funny stories in the OR. One time, one of the patients woke up after surgery and she says, as she's coming out from anesthesia, she goes, "Oh, I love to be naked." And we're like, "What?"
Little
Right. So,
subliminal activity going on there.
yeah. So it was really funny. She's also a Scorpio. So I was always really passionate about and comfortable talking about this. And I started looking at my mom's Cosmopolitan magazines when I was 7. Like, this has definitely been my calling.
Yeah.
And my friends would be like, "Oh, that sex tip you shared with me, like, saved my marriage." And I would just give them sex tips. My daughter once saw me watching the Oxygen Channel. She was 13 now. Now she's 36, but she was watching me watch Talk Sex with Sue Johnson, who is a nurse. And Sue Johnson would have
Wait,
like these
your
Barbies.
daughter's 36?
Yeah, on Halloween, I turned 56.
No.
Yeah, I
You
have
look
still some gray
36.
hairs.
I told Jim before you came on, I says, I was checking out Dominique and I can't believe she's 56 years old. It said somewhere on one of your bios. I
Yes.
said, she looks like she's 35. She looks incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, orgasms are the fountain of youth, and non-ejaculatory orgasms are the fountain of youth for men. And we'll dive into that. But what I want to share is like Sue Johnson had these little Barbies, and she was this older woman, and she would be talking about sex. And I was studying for an exam. I was furthering my education as a nurse. I've been a nurse since I was 19. And my daughter walks through the living room and she sees me watching this woman and she goes, Oh my gosh, mom, someday that's going to be you. You're going to be on TV talking about sex because I was so comfortable with these conversations. It was really funny.
Mhm.
So, what I will say is, I was at the top of my friends of my experiences with sex. And what blew my mind was I realized in that moment of this orgasmicness that I had merely been scratching the surface of what was possible for me, like the tip of the iceberg. I was like, wow, there's so much more I can experience and I never imagined possible. Now I'm curious to go down rabbit holes because I'm just like, okay, now what else has been like hidden in plain sight? What else am I capable of that I've never known? And so that's
Yeah,
what brought me on this path.
I love it. I wanted you to delve into the Kundalini experience because you're the only person I've ever met that shared that they've had one. I had one, not during sex. I was actually mountain biking. I was doing breath work, visualization. I'd been doing some self-engineering programs with Sadhguru. I was doing some breath work techniques that he shared. I was visualizing my heart chakra and trying to picture every single person I've ever met in my life from birth till that day and send them love through my heart chakra while I'm mountain biking, of course, and
I
doing
love
these
that.
breathing techniques. All of a sudden, something on my bike broke. I had to get off my bike to fix it. And when I stood up, something felt odd. And I just had this inner knowing that I needed to lay down and lay fast. And I got myself onto my back fairly quickly. And I didn't know what was happening, but all of a sudden it felt like a chiropractor was going in and correcting all the misalignments in my spine, starting at the base of my spine, working the way up. I could literally feel the pop, snap, poop, pop, all to
Wow.
my spine. And then this rush of energy comes flowing up, just like you described, from the base of my spine, but it was blocked in my heart. And I just felt
Yes.
this energy building up. I'm laying on my back like this, and all this energy is building up, building up, building up. And all of a sudden, pop! I just feel this pop inside, and all this energy starts flowing out my arms to my hands, up through the crown of my head. And I'm just laying on my back, and everything's so surreal. I have no idea how much time passed. It could have been a second, could have been an hour. I don't know. And I got up and didn't even think about it. And I go over and I start to work on my bike, and my buddy that was with me, he's like, "What just happened?" I don't know.
That's amazing. I love that
Yeah.
you had a witness to that
Uh,
experience. And also, what divine timing of the universe, source looking out for you, because I don't think it was an accident that your bike needed help because you needed to be able to stop and not be
Yeah.
riding your bike because
Yeah.
something was about to shift through you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything is really working out in our favor if we just
Mhm.
see that and lean into it. And so many of us have heart blocks. Like I would assist with open heart surgeries. And the reason I left my 30 plus years career as a nurse is I was like, these are the tools that open people's hearts.
Yeah.
This is what opened my heart. And when my heart chakra opened, all my relationships improved romantic, friendships, my daughters, my family, my coworkers, everything improved. But so many of us, we think about, oh, you have a blockage in your heart and you need open heart surgery. We all have blockages in our heart, in our
Yeah.
heart chakra center. And that's where you were intentionally focusing on your heart space with love and opening and pouring that love out. And you were just giving it that opportunity to unkink itself so that everything could rush through you and get in alignment.
Really interesting to finish that story up. Well, first off, I had like unlimited energy. My buddy's like, "Are you going to be able to?" We're like 6 miles deep into the woods with in one of the hardest mountain biking trails I've ever rode. And he's like, "You going to be okay to get out of here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." So effortless, literally effortless the rest of my mountain biking. And for days, felt all this unlimited energy. Just everything was effortless. It was like bliss, man. It was great. Then I saw a woman. So I had smoked some pot in the morning of this day, and I saw a woman that I have really high regards of. She's a very spiritual woman. She kind of reminds me a little bit of my grandmother, but just amazing spiritual woman. She has conversations with Jesus. She writes books about it. I saw her and I felt guilty about smoking pot, and my heart chakra, I felt it immediately close as soon as I laid
Ooh.
eyes on her. And it was like the embarrassment or the shame that caused it to
Shame is the
close.
worst for us. It
Very
really
interesting.
constricts us and lowers us because if you look at an emotional frequency scale and it's like an upside down triangle, shame is at the very bottom of it. That's the lowest frequency in hertz. The lowest vibration is shame. It's 20 hertz. Love and joy in the heart chakra is at 400, around 400 hertz. And joy is above that. So that's expansion. And then the lower vibration energies are contraction, and you felt that contraction in your heart.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that society has tried to condition us to have so much shame. We have our first experiences with shame as early as 15 months of age. This is
Mhm.
how our society tries to control us and program us, modify our behaviors. In school, teachers will shame us if we're misbehaving, embarrass us in front of our peers. So shame has been something that is used, and I think this is why there is so much shame around our sex in society, because in shame, we're lowering our vibration. We're going down to 20 hertz, and we're more easy to control or program as a species, as a society, if we're in our lower vibration states. We're playing small, we're dimming our light, we're not being vibrant and full of energy and alive and feeling unstoppable. All of a sudden, we're shutting down and we're constricted and we're playing small. And we're going from limitless to being limited. Our sexual energy is our life force energy. It's our creative energy. It's connected to our sacral chakra, which is our creative center. We literally were created from this energy. So why is there so much shame in creation? Why is this topic so challenging to talk about? But everything is a tool, and it depends on how we use it, right? If our intention of using a tool. But our modern world has twisted and perverted this energy and made it wrong or bad. Also had us limit ourselves, and we experience it usually in a shallow, superficial way. We can be with someone skin to skin, ego validation. We can be with someone and be in our mind fantasizing about someone else and not being fully present. We haven't learned how to really make love to someone's soul. But if we want a soul mate, we need to know how to do soul mating, because Tantra creates soulmate relationships because you're making love to that person's soul. You know how to have sacred sexuality. And that's where you can have your greatest growth and empowerment.
I heard once that it's actually soul depleting to have sex with strangers or people that aren't soulmates.
Because sex is SEX, sacred energy exchange. I used to be up for the casual encounters before Tantra. And I'm a nurse, so I would educate myself, do my testing, use prophylactics, and being safe. And then I realized when I got into the energetics with Tantra, wow, I can't protect myself from someone's bad energy. We are literally sharing energy with that person. And especially for women, we're being penetrated by that person. And how many times are some men just blowing off steam or frustration from a rough day, and they're literally pouring that frustration into the partner that they're with? If someone's trying to hook up with you, you're meeting their representative. You don't know what traumas that they've had. You don't know if they were road raging on the way to hook up with you, and they're presenting themselves one way. Then you're with them, and then the next day you can feel off and be like, why do I feel stressed today? I feel sad today. I feel really angry and frustrated. What's going on? Energy is just emotions or energy in motion. And you just shared that energy with that person in your most sacred space and into your body. You let them in closer to you than you would let anyone else in. And we're not a dumping ground for someone's, emotional traumas.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
That's why we had to be aware. So now it's like, okay, if I'm going to be with someone, would I want to be like that person? Think about that quote about, how your parents will tell you, you are like the 5 people you spend the most time with. What
Mhm.
about the people that you are the most intimate with? That's impacting you even more.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Hopefully there's not 5 of those.
Hopefully not, but me, this is my research. So I've done my 10,000 hours to become a sexpert out in the field. I just recently finished being celibate for 2 years. Now I've had
Wow.
periods of celibacy, and I just do my
Mhm.
tantric self-pleasure rituals and things like that for myself,
Yeah.
because I also want to have someone that's going to be a good match for me energetically. And now I'm very careful with it. But I've had my past, but I can tell the difference of what those experiences were like compared to now. Those other experiences that were ego validation, shallow, superficial, I'm not interested in that anymore. If it
I'm
doesn't
assuming you're
have
single.
depth, yeah, I'm single. It's challenging though. You've got to think, for men, most men, it'd be challenging to date someone who is guiding other men and talking so openly about sex positivity.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you talk about at the beginning, I said, men would feel weak, and yeah, I could definitely see.
yeah, I dated someone a few years ago, and he was visiting me, and he happened to be in the other room when I was doing the podcast. And the gentleman interviewing me wanted to talk about soulgasm. So I did. And he left for a little bit. And he texted me and he came back. He was like, couldn't you have just talked about something else? You could have just told them you didn't want to talk about that. I was like, that's how I started this path. And this is what changed my life. I'm not, for your ego, I'm not going to change the topic. Like, my mission is more important than having a relationship, honestly. I'm like, my purpose is more important.
To be with someone supportive. And if
I do have a lover that's in California, and we've been lovers for years. He's much younger than me, but he totally supports what I do and is not intimidated by anything about me, and completely loves and respects me in a really beautiful way. So there are men that can handle that for sure. But it takes a very special person to be really comfortable within themselves to be like, okay, this is just an experience that she's had, and she's sharing because her mission on her heart is to really help humanity. And that's bigger than, my fears. And so,
So you mentioned that you're mainly working with men recently, and I saw something on X the other day. I think it was that OnlyFans creators were paid more than the
NBA stars.
NBA stars.
Wow.
So, and it just passed that. So, as you're talking to guys about this, I mean, there's such a prevalence of now. Everybody knows it's negative, but yet it's. I think 80% of men are regular porn users now.
They did these studies, and younger men are having higher incidences of ED because of watching adult videos. I want you to think about, for example, for both of you, when you first started self-pleasuring, maybe your dad would have a Playboy magazine, but you're still looking at a still image, and you're not starting this adventure of having self-pleasure and how you're experiencing pleasure and orgasmicness. You're not doing it by watching a video with a rapid fire sequence of money shot of like, pussy tits ass, all these images. What is happening is that as young boys, if this is how they're starting, because it's so easy for them to access on their phones, if they're starting this way, with our brain being our largest sex organ and neuroplasticity, they're creating these pleasure pathways in their brains that are hardwired to rely on this. So then when they want to be intimate and be with a lover, with a woman, all of a sudden their penis is like, hey, where's all the visuals? Especially you're doing missionary position or the lights are out and the body doesn't know how to respond because it's gotten used to having all this crazy stimulation to keep going. And that's what's causing this challenge. And then men are more frustrated. I do support men in overcoming addiction to adult videos, but then men will go to doing NoFap. Have you heard of NoFap? Are you familiar with that?
What's that?
Okay, no and FAP. It's where men won't self-pleasure at all and they'll be celibate. This is what a lot of men are doing. And this is why we have a rise of a lot of angry men, because they're very sexually frustrated. Then they're trying to overcome because they've started having ED and challenges with adult videos being all consuming for them and having a negative impact in all areas of their lives. So then they think that the solution is just cold turkey. I'm just not going to do anything then. It's an all or nothing deal. What happens there is they're so frustrated. And what I will share is don't do the NoFap. Instead, learn how to have non-ejaculatory orgasms and have rewire neuroplasticity in your brain so that you're not dependent on the adult videos and you're not having the challenges with the ED. But if you're having NoFap, you're not having pleasure in your body, and that's not healthy. Pleasure is medicine. You're disconnecting from your body, but if you can have self-pleasure in a way that it's a self-love practice where you're very intentional with it and you're using it as a way to really connect with your body and be your own best lover, because you are your longest lasting relationship from your first breath to your last. And if you haven't mastered the relationship with yourself, you're going to have a challenge being in relationship with others. And recently, what is making me think, I work with women, men, and couples as well, but I'm going to shift a little bit more towards women this year, because even recently, just the other day, a man was messaging me in my DMs about maybe working together. And he's having questions and he's kind of challenging me on the non-ejaculatory orgasms and semen retention for men and not believing it. And I said, one of my teachers Master Montauk Chia, he's been teaching this for 50 years. He's getting close to 80, I think now. He's like an energizer bunny. Like you said, on the bike, you had all that energy.
Mm.
Like this helps your life force, your vitality, your longevity. It's not just about lasting longer in bed. It helps you last longer in life. So I said, here's his Instagram channel. Here's a couple of his videos. It doesn't matter to me what you decide to do, but this is the truth about it and the benefits. And he would come back and message me and say, I just don't understand. I think women are just trying to get men to do this so that we can. And I said, wait a second. I'm not sure why you're so stressed about women. I didn't say anything about women asking you to do this. I'm talking about the health benefits of this for you. And this is like the wisdom of this master in this area. And there's science with it.
Sounds like you were getting trolled or
For sure.
or just too immature to.
Yeah.
And he's
For you
an
to spend
older
your time
man.
with.
So what ended up happening though, I let I was just like, whatever. And then he ends up messaging me and he's so angry and so raged. He was saying it was January the 6th. And he was like, it's been 6 days and I haven't done anything. And I have so much anger in me. So I was like, oh, he's doing NoFap. He's having a meltdown over this. So I just sent him my YouTube video on why NoFap isn't good. So he replied back and he was like, I just can't take anything in. I'm just the anger I have right now. I could harm someone. I just blocked him.
Wow. Yeah.
He
that's
got
scary.
really very violent. And I was like, okay, this is the universe showing me something. This is the universe showing me just the way I was feeling about NoFap. It's even bigger. This is also why there's so many angry men, because Psychology Today did an article in 2022 talking about the rise of the lonely man. And there's more and more men that are in their 30s and younger that are involuntarily celibate because a lot of women don't feel the pressure that they have to be in a relationship and they're not settling for unhealthy relationships. And women
Good
are
for them.
starting to do their work. And so men are resenting and angry towards women because now they're, don't have the outlet. Like even the last voice memo the guy had sent was, I don't even have money to get a hooker right now. And I'm like,
Oh my
gosh.
God.
I'm like, what? I was like, yeah, you are not
You,
someone I
yeah.
want to work with. You really,
A lot of
for
other
me-
work.
Yeah. And I was like, there's a lot of a mother wound. There's a lot of resentment towards the feminine because most of us all have a mother wound because our moms were repressed in society and didn't have a voice or were being disempowered. And that frustration, they were sad. They weren't able to self-actualize. They were just being the wifey or the mom and not being their full selves and exploring who they were outside of that. And so that loss, that sadness, they wanted to disconnect and not feel that sadness. So they may drink or do other things to numb from that. And when they're disconnecting emotionally from their emotions, they're disconnecting from their children's emotional needs, not knowing that. So a lot of us had a mom that was very disconnected and not emotionally present. So there's a lot of us that have resentment towards the women or have a mother wound. And this is showing up in our society right now.
Yeah, I think I've seen that in other men before, for sure.
I'll pause now and let you ask questions.
This has been great.
Yeah, I have like 3 check marks up here because 30 minutes ago you're saying this and this and this, and then I'm like, yeah, check, and you're literally describing me.
Thank you. I appreciate you vulnerably sharing that. I'm here to help people with these challenges. I've had them too. This is what's helped keep me heal.
I think it's what Jim was saying, about not wanting to show vulnerability or weakness.
Yeah.
We were talking about locker room talk, what it is, and heck, that's in my entire adult life. I wouldn't go to my buddies, like at this point, or yesterday, I should say. I wouldn't go to my buddies if you and I had a session. I just wouldn't tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that obviously doesn't help anybody, right? It probably would be beneficial to me to let that go. But sometimes I look at things really short-sighted. And then maybe in 2 or 3 days, I come back and think of it and say, maybe it would be more beneficial. Because like Jim's been in this self-exploring healing scene and yoga and breath work and all that other stuff for years, for his entire adult life, pretty much. I kind of came into all this from not quite that guy who was,
Angry old
texted
man.
in. I was never that, but I certainly wasn't what I am today, 7 months after we started this podcast, because it's been, a journey for me that I'm really opening up to. And then you talk about things that are really not in my comfort zone, but it really just does open a whole new way of thinking about how I'm going to think about myself. And I made a note when you were going through your chakras on the wall behind you. We need to do an hour just on that stuff because 6
Sure.
months ago, I didn't know what is a chakra? How do I spell that? So I'm a newbie at this. And just going into this, once again, I'm a lot more comfortable now than I was a month ago when we had our other guest on talking about this topic. But you make it easy though.
I appreciate that.
You really
Thank
do
you so
make
much.
make it comfortable to explore this not so comfortable topic.
Yes.
I haven't been the least bit uncomfortable in this conversation.
That's what my clients will tell me too when they work with me because they're just like, I'm just so comfortable talking about this. But the thing is, I had a challenge with my mother. I had a mother wound. My mother was overly sexual because she had a childhood wound and she was looking for love in all the wrong places. She would tell me before I was sexually active, she would just be like, oh my gosh, just let me know when you're ready to have sex. I'll put you on the pill. I love sex. Your dad loves sex. Your grandparents love sex. You're going to love it. I was terrified, you guys. I was like the last one of my friends to lose my virginity. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be like the school or be wild like my mom. So I had this big fear about that, right? So I had paused on it. But my mom was very sexual woman and would openly talk about sex. And it would really frustrate me as a child because I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't take you anywhere. I want you to go to a PTA meeting, but you're going to be a big flirt and you're going to be very sexual. Can I just like have a regular mom? And it wasn't until years later after she had passed that I was actually at the Playboy Mansion at a party. And I was there and I was thinking, because I remember my granddad had subscription to Playboy magazines. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, my granddad would be so excited to know that I'm here. And then I thought about my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, my mom would be so excited too. And that's when the dots connected. I was like, oh my gosh, that's why she was my mom. She was my mom so I could be comfortable talking about these things. That was the gift that I got from my mom because it's just always been such a topic of conversation and talked about without a lot of shame that it's really easy for me to talk about it and not bring that energy of shame into it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because this is really a source of power for us if we know how to use it that way.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about vital life force energy and controlling it and using it in the right way. I have a question. How do you have an orgasm without ejaculation for a guy?
Oh, this is a challenging thing. It's not an easy thing to learn. A lot of times when I work with my clients, I'm just like, just remember, you have to put the reps in, like get the muscle memory. You're going to create new pleasure pathways in your brain that are longer to prolong the pleasure and have a different experience in your body. You have been experiencing pleasure this way for a very long time, especially when you first start to learn to self-pleasure. You do things very fast to not get caught by your parents. Again, shame. So you already start the first few times when you're having solo experiences doing it fast. And that makes a deeper groove in the brain of going down that path to where you're going through things very quickly. So now we want to change that. But I will tell clients, just like if you go to a trainer and you go work out at the gym, one time you're not going to walk out and have a 6-pack of abs. This is the same thing. You have to put the reps in. And the more you put into it, you're going to see that result in your body. But what will happen is men will shoot their orgasmic energy out through their shaft. And if you're doing this frequently and with people that have an addiction to adult videos, they may be having, multiple times a day, and you're literally draining your life force energy. But if you can learn to separate and sense the orgasm and kind of bring through breath work and energy and direct that turn on up and breathe it up through your body this way and bring it inward, you start to have a different mastery and you get to a point where actually able to have like this energetic orgasm coming through you without the liquid needing to shoot out of you. So you're creating that separation, but it takes a while. The fastest someone has been able to do this was in about 6 weeks, but they already did a lot of like meditation, Pilates, yoga already. Their body was pretty fine-tuned because your body's that foundation. Your body's the instrument to experience this and experience pleasure. So they already had that foundation and that groundwork laid out. So it was easier for them to experience that. But this is in solo because you first want to do this solo because women were so intuitive. And if you're she will just get frustrated and not desire to be with you because it starts to feel like a lab experiment instead of like really having lovemaking and intimacy. Because a man, you're in your head trying to think like, okay, now I need to do this. I should breathe like this. So you want to have some level of self-mastery. And then at about 6 months or so, you can do this with a partner because a woman also there in Tantra, the word for the vulva or vagina is the yoni, which means sacred space. For the male penis, it's called a lingam or wand of light. Whenever you're able to have these experiences, and whenever a woman is like able to open up more, she's going to be so turned on that she's going to be pulling your energy towards her, and it will try to make you to ejaculate and finish. So you want to master this solo first, but it just
Okay.
takes some time, but it definitely can happen. One of my clients, he was in his 60s and Viagra was even failing him. He could not make love to his wife. They've been married for over 30 years. So she was supportive of him working with me. When we started working together, within a few weeks, their sex life improved. In about 6 months, he said to me, you know, on Monday before work, we made love for an hour. And she had 6 to 8 climaxes. And I was ready to go again the next day. He goes, I feel so much power in my lingam. I wish that I would have discovered this 15 years ago. He goes, now we are having better lovemaking experiences in our 60s than when we were in our 30s. And she was joking with him, I need to work with Dominique now so I can keep up with you. He says, you helped me heal a generational familial wound, a generational trauma. And I'm now a new person to myself and a new partner to my wife. And my anger issues have all but dissipated. And he had lost his mother a few months before we started working together. And he thought his mother never loved him. And through our work together, I worked with him for about a year because we went deeper into a lot of different areas. And I helped him to see that his mom did love him. It was her childhood trauma from his grandfather that he was picking up on, and he was thinking it was about him. Then I guided him on another root chakra, inner child healing, mother, father wound healing practice in a session, and he was able to cry for the first time after losing his mother. There is a connection energetically, and in some books and things that I read of the energetics, that men that have ED commonly have a mother wound. So that was really interesting. So a lot of healing on that, and also helped him to optimize his health. He was able to stop one of his blood pressure medications, of course, under the guidance of his physician. But I help my clients holistically because your body, again, is the instrument to experience pleasure. So how are we going to optimize your body? And when we start to do that, it has a ripple effect through your relationships, your health, everything, your energy levels.
Now, is that seed retention? I've heard some people call that. Is that also what's making lovemaking afterwards not feeling drained or being recharged or energized? Is that part of it, or is that something completely different?
You're exactly right. That is
Okay.
a big part of it. And the Taoist practices are very similar to Tantra. And in Taoism, they believe that the reason on average the lifespan of males is shorter than females is because men lose their life force energy through frequent ejaculation. Women, we get charged up with this energy. So that's why after lovemaking, you will see men will quickly fall asleep and women will be more talkative. Women lose life force energy through pregnancy, childbirth, and menstruation. Now, when women feel like lovemaking is a chore or they've had some kind of trauma in that area and it's not really lighting them up because it might be layered in with a lot of shame, intimacy blocks, or pleasure blocks, they may feel really worn out afterwards and tired. And that's a whole different ball game. But yes, this is how you energize your body and you actually can manifest more. Have you ever read the book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich?
Oh, many times. And I had
Okay.
it on audio cassette and probably listened to it.
Yes, that is like my favorite book.
Yeah.
And chapter 11 is titled The Mystery of Sex. It's talking about sexual transmutation. Now, this book was published in the 1930s. So you can imagine, even now, I get a lot of pushback in sharing sex positive information. My main Yes Tantra page with 30,000 followers on Instagram was shut down a year ago by Instagram.
Wow.
And they're like, you don't meet community guidelines. I had replied and I said, well, if it wasn't for sex, you wouldn't have a community. None of us would be here.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so many wild things on Instagram, but I think there's also a double standard of people can be comfortable with men talking about these topics, but they're uncomfortable with women speaking on it. And then other women are also afraid, oh, if my partner is following this person, they're following their account, are they going to slide into her DMs? And they're not worried if their partner is following a man talking about this and sliding into his DMs. It's different. I'm just like, it's not ethical for me to be with my clients. I'm not with my clients that way. I'm like, women, I'm here in support of you. I'm here to help him make better love to you. It was not a competition. But this is really charging you up with that vitality, and it's a game changer. And so imagining Napoleon Hill, how much it was really edgy for him to have a whole chapter dedicated on this topic. That's how important it was. The most successful people in that time knew how to master this energy, and it's called sexual transmutation, but he couldn't go into how that happens. But that's exactly what Tantra is. It's this sexual alchemy. You
Mhm.
being the alchemist, it's sexual transmutation. It's channeling that energy and even focusing it in towards manifesting, towards what your passion, your purpose is, infusing it so that you have more energy, just like you did on your bike ride, where you feel limitless. Like, I have all this energy to go. I can do anything. I can knock out any obstacle in my way. That's what this has the potential of doing for us. But we're not taught these things. We don't get this education. We're dumbed down. I don't think it's a mistake that
Mhm.
adult videos are so easily accessible.
I wanted to mention I've noticed a lot of things maybe 10 years ago or more, and since then, like news articles or science kind of blurbs that were saying that men should ejaculate every day for prolonged health and live longer. So that's different from what you're saying.
But it's counterproductive because, I mean, I can see from what she's been saying, it is a life energy, and this isn't the first time we've heard this.
Right.
And so that would be counterproductive to just common sense.
Yeah, but why is there all these science things saying that it's
Who's
you
saying?
have more energy
did
and
th-
live longer?
I
I'm just
thi-
saying there's
I-
been a lot of articles.
Well, I get
There
that, but unless those sources, I mean, the holistic healer, the holistic physician, they're there to take care of. I really believe that they have a good intentions. The pharmaceutical community, the medical establishment, and whoever said that these scientific articles,
Mhm.
they have an agenda. So I'm not a really one to say, hey, that's trust the science, because remember,
I used to believe that too. And my first lover who had mastered this, I was enjoying the benefits of it, but also my ego was like, if you're not finishing, you're not satisfied by me. It's
Mhm.
so conditioned into us. And so even though it feels a lot better and he's lasting longer and able to have these experiences I couldn't have, there was still a part of me that wanted him to finish. So sometimes when I'd be with him, I would try to get him to finish, and he could sense it, what I
Okay.
was trying to do. And he would look at me, he's like, why are you trying to do that? And I would be like, I'm a nurse and it decreases prostate cancer if you have ejaculations. I'm just looking out for you, and
trust the
then when
science.
yeah. So
But
then whenever I learned more and got my certification and he and I remain friends, I circled back with him at a conversation. I was like, yeah, I'm really sorry that I did that. Now I understand. Now, what can cause cancer is it's dis-ease, it's discomfort in our bodies, it's stuck emotion, it's trapped emotions, even people pleasing, not being able to say no to people, not being in our authentic power and not being our true selves. That actually has it more likely for us to experience cancer. I was just listening to something by Dr. Gabor Mate on this. So it was really mind blowing, like a 4x increase in cancer. So when you have these emotions or you have shame, you have fear, men are very emotionally repressed because you're not taught how to deal with your emotions. You're just taught big boys don't cry, just be quiet. I'll give you something to cry about. And so you think that, okay, being a man is not having those emotions. And anger is just sadness not expressed. So men can express sadness because they don't want to be seen as weak, and it builds up and then it's channeled, it's turned into anger, right? But what I would see even with my patients, a lot of times I could see that and sense that this woman that was coming in the hospital, that she was very sexually repressed. Either she was in a sexless marriage or she was widowed or divorced and older and just disconnected. Like you could just sense that she didn't have that juiciness. She's just like really uptight and constricted and very rigid and would have a lot of challenges in reproductive health and different cancers. It's literally things are eating away at us. What is important is having the flow of this sexual energy through the chakras to prevent dis-ease. Because again, emotions are energy in motion. So I want you to think of a swamp, a body of water, and the swamp is stagnant. It's not flowing. And across the top of the swamp and the water is this layer, this coat, this film of stuff that is great for bacteria, for things to grow. a great place to create disease. Now visualize a body of water that's a river moving and flowing, completely different. That water is much more healthy to drink or to put your body into than this swamp water. Same thing with our energy. When it's not flowing and it's stagnant or stuck, then you have more chance of disease. So they're thinking of, oh, if someone's not ejaculating, they're equating it to they're not even having sex or being sexually active. They're not looking and comparing what is the incidence of men who do semen retention with prostate cancer versus those that don't. That hasn't been studied. Now, there was a study on these nematode worms that the lifespan of these worms are about 28 days. And they did a study, and I can't remember the exact numbers. Some worms were able to, have sex and ejaculate, and their lifespan, was much shorter. And then the nematode worms that were able to have sex, I don't know if they snipped them so there wouldn't be an ejaculation or whatever, but they were able to be sexually active. They actually had a longer lifespan. And then the ones that weren't having sex at all were having this low lifespan. So they looked at these, and it was like a 10x longer lifespan than normal on the worms that were having sex without ejaculating. This and our vitality and our juiciness and our turn on, it makes us more magnetic. So Think and Grow Rich, you're magnetizing things to yourself. Clients have started earning more money. Even tell them, stop ejaculating 3 times a day for a couple of weeks and see what happens. And they were like, oh my gosh, women are just approaching me. I've never experienced it before. They closed a $1.7 million deal for the company they were working in, biggest sell the company had in 3 years. All these things opened up for him because he wasn't completely drained. He was showing up in his full essence. I will also share with you, when I worked with clients that have adult video addictions, a lot of times when I go into the deep work and the inner child work, a lot of them have a mother wound. And what they're really wanting in those moments of being in this fantasy of watching the video is they're really craving the attention from the feminine. So if they didn't get that affection, that affirmation, those things, that connection with their mothers, they're going to look for it through a woman, through either a lover that could be unhealthy, just like their mothers, because we're reenacting our childhood wounds to try to heal them, or we're looking at videos. This person had lost his mother at an early age. And so the power of having these fantasies with women, it's like you're craving that feminine energy that you didn't get a mother, but you still were craving love and attention, and you're getting attention from the feminine when you're watching these videos.
Lots and lots and lots to think about. And I'm not being patronizing saying that. I mean,
I love how vulnerable you're being. Honestly, it's really beautiful in how you're sharing, and you can see these light bulb moments. And that's why I love talking about it. It's so much deeper than the surface.
it would be much deeper if I wasn't sitting next to him and on Zoom.
Yeah. And that's where the magic really happens, is whenever.
Sure.
Yeah. And our moms, it's interesting. Our moms were sisters with same grandparents. So there's a lot of weird relationship stuff with them and their parents.
You're talking that 2-3 minutes about, and I'm thinking the exact same thing that Jim's just thinking. How grandma and grandpa, mom, Aunt Diane, me, teenage years, childhood craziness.
Yeah.
I'm just dumb.
It's all a learning experience and then unlearning those things.
You've made me kind of connect the dots a little bit.
Yay. I love that. What kind of dots are connecting for you?
We'll
if you're
talk
open to
about
sharing?
that. We'll talk
Okay.
about that. I'm
Okay.
definitely going to be in touch with you after.
It's really beautiful. I truly love working with men. One, it was a man that helped me have my awakening. And when I was first going to learn Tantra, and I studied for 6 months with an amazing teacher, right before I was going to get certified, she said, oh, one thing though, if you're certified under my name with me, you can't work with men. I was like, what do you mean I can't work with men? She's like, yeah, because men are going to try to hit on you, and then that's not ethical. And I was like, I can hold my boundaries. She's like, no, you have to only work with women if you're going to be certified by me.
Interesting.
And I said, well, I can't leave the men behind. If it wasn't for a man, I wouldn't even have been on this path. And if men don't know this, who are the women going to be with? But it actually ended up being a gift, because then I went and I learned from other people. And one of the women I learned from and I got my certification from, she learned from Margot Anand, and Margot Anand had learned from Osho and actually had been intimate with Osho before. So I got like a really deep transmission. And then the other one had learned from someone that was really great. Both of these women put together a program and I worked with them for 2 years. And they even shared things in a much more powerful way. My learning deepened so much. So that was great. I really want to be that bridge of helping men and women have a better understanding. Like, again, this is how society is separating us and having it be the battle of the sexes and, women are this and men are that. If instead we can be allies and understand, okay, these are the traumas and the challenges that I have. This is what I experience as a man that's hard for me. And these are the things I experience that are hard in this world for me as a woman. How can we be champions for each other's challenges and be allies and be a force together? But when we separate and we're separated by gender, our religion, our political parties, all of these things, we're so divided, it's a divide and conquer. It's easier to control us because we're just fighting against each other instead of saying, hey, how can we change? When we want to see a world filled with more peace and more love, it starts with us.
Agreed. Yeah.
And when we can change our world, and our outer world is just a reflection of our inner world. We think it's an outside in game. We think, okay, once I have this degree, have the wife, have the car, have the picket fence, blah, 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 the 2 kids, I'm happy. But no, then you realize after you do all these things or have a certain amount of money in your bank account, yeah, the money can make things easier for sure, but it's still not complete happiness. But if we would instead focus on our inner world, then that's how we're going to see everything start to shift in our outer world. And when we start to shine our light, then we can also be like beacon of light to help other people find their way home and just help one another.
I love it.
This has been really cool.
Yeah, it's been totally awesome. We would love to have you back on the show again in the future. if
I
you're
would
okay.
love, yes. I know we just got this party started.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I felt that earlier on.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap? Because we're over the hour. And
Yes. Just to know that there's this saying, the cave that we fear to enter has our buried treasure. A lot of times these topics that seem really edgy or scary for us or have us be vulnerable, that could be like where your superpower lies. I learned that with vulnerability, that was actually my strength and my superpower. Anything is possible for you, and it's never too late. We have this saying like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I completely changed my life and my life path at 44. And I didn't know if I would ever heal from my childhood trauma. And I also want to add real quick that the 3 tenets of Tantra for over 5,000 years is breath, sound, and movement. And when I became a trauma-informed master coach and went through all my trauma learning modules, the 3 things in our modern world that are used to heal trauma are breath, sound, and movement. And I was like, wow, this is how I started having my healing. So this can be such a therapeutic way and a way that you can really empower yourself and improve your health, your relationships, and your quality of life.
very good.
Well said. Well, Dominique, I'm going to be in touch afterwards. I'd like to talk to you about a couple things.
I would love to have a conversation with you. And also want to share too with your listeners that I do have a free Tantra quiz that will also let you see like where you may have intimacy blocks or emotional blocks that could be impacting your relationships, even if it's not romantic. The last thing I do want to drop here is so many men will say, oh, well, I don't have a partner right now, so I don't need to do this. If I had someone, I would learn this, but actually this is easier to learn while you are single, and it will help you attract better relationships. If you're having challenges of being single, you need to do this because we're like raising our vibration, and law of attraction, like attracts like. And when you start to raise your vibration, you're going to attract a person that's at a higher vibration too, and you'll have better partners. And if you're in relationships are just mirrors to the relationship we have with ourselves, and we start to heal within ourselves, that's going to have a ripple effect in our current relationship. So just know that you don't have to have your partner on board to do this. It can just starts with you.
Excellent. What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
My website, yestantra.com, and there's a link to my quiz there as well.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for joining us. We look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Me too. Blessings, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, Dominique.